mentioned it just then in that answer. You do far more than just coach athletes. And do you find it now hard to rid yourself of just SNC Brett, both yourself internally and then obviously externally to other people? So when you do go into these Fortune 500 companies and Google and Microsoft and all these people that you've worked with, and then what advice can you give these coaches that want to progress their career laterally, not necessarily rid themselves of the coach identity, but still dip their toe, but obviously have far more to their reservoir of their personality and their skill set than just being a coach?
Yeah, the first part of what you said is, do you find itself hard to rid yourself of Coach Brett? It depends on the audience, and I'll kind of weave this into the answer. The first thing our people listening need to understand is we're a very weird field, actually, in that people tend to self-identify with just being on the floor from 20 years old to 68 to 70 or what have you. I have a dentist that I go to, and he used to be an assistant. Then he was a dental hygienist full time. Now he owns his own dental practice, and now he's turned that into multiple dental practices. You mentioned hip hop earlier. I've always looked at people like Jay-Z as a great example. This is somebody who, right, like was a rapper, and now he has several businesses. He still can rap. I don't think anybody would test him on that. Dr. Dre started as a DJ, then rapped, of course, part of NWA, then became a producer, then created Beats by Dre with Jimmy Iovine. So I always just look at it really weird is I think our field doesn't really think, what else could I be? I can walk and chew gum. I don't just need to be this. And by the way, talk about the term coach. It originated in the 15th century, meant, right? It was a vehicle to travel, keep you or take you from here to there. And then it got adopted as a term for like teachers and education because they help people go from a more unlearned space to more educated space. So I would tell these folks that don't forget coaching, that term expands way beyond sport. That term expands way beyond. We use coaching as synonymous with leadership. One of our slides in our presentation says, if you guide, lead, teach, educate anybody in any kind of orchestrated format, you are a coach. So even if I stopped coaching athletes today and I coached my employees in my company, I'm coaching them, and I coach people through different things in their life and what have you. So I tell people to quit having such a narrow definition of what you do. You have people in all these other fields. Everybody talks about grit. Angela Ducksworth. Well, she's an academic. Should she not do other things? Jocko Willink, he was in the military. Should he not do other things? And so I just looked around at performance and I'm like, so let me get this straight. I can just train athletes. I can be a performance director, or I can own a gym. That's it. There's nothing the world of performance can teach. Think about all the folks you guys have coached, we've coached, everybody listening has coached. What the hell? Like, why does everybody else get to tell lessons from their industry to a broader audience, but we can't? Who deals with more power dynamics than all of us do? Think about it. People go to your facility, they pay you. So technically you work for them. And I get it where it's collaborative, right? But just stay with me. They're paying you for a service, yet you've got to tell them what to do. Yet many of their athletic abilities supersede anything you guys could do or I could do, right? I know we're all reasonably fit or what have you, but I can't run a 40-yard dash as fast as some of my guys. And so I always tell people I'm a 5'8" white dude from Omaha, Nebraska, trying to tell a group of people collectively worth $130 million what to do, even though they may not want to do it. That's power dynamics 101. So I just think that people on our field need to have a bigger vision of this. And I think the last thing I'll say on this, and hopefully it answers the question, is one time I went and spoke at a fitness conference, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh God, here we go. The fitness people, right? It's going to be a lot of rah chants, crazy exercises, what have you. You know what? I saw 3 speakers in a row give banger presentations on business and how they grew what they're doing and what have you. And all it was, guys, is periodization applied to a business plan. So ironically, coaches are perfectly suited to be entrepreneurs, right? Your periodization and everything, that's your business plan. Your day-to-day within it, that's how you work the business. You've got progressions and regressions. Great. We got ascension-based offerings and other offerings. If you don't want to do a course, we got this. And so I think a lot of it just comes down to a confidence issue in the lies we've been told. And also people in our field, I think sometimes are a little bit too skeptical. They had one bad experience in sales and marketing, and they think that's the devil. Yet your entire job as a coach is sales and marketing. Hey, do this squat. It'll make you more resilient. Do this on the trampoline. It will help this. Your whole job is marketing and education. So get over yourself, see the bigger picture, and realize that our profession's not special, right? You just have to think a little bit bigger and see the lateral applications. Does that answer that kind of holistically?
Yeah, definitely. And if people that are listening haven't watched the Dr. Dre, Jimmy Iovine doco, it actually is a really good lesson.
The Defiant ones is probably one of the best. We have it on a Con Ed list. And I remember an intern one time goes, I don't watch TV. I go, well, you should. And I go, if you don't watch TV, what do you do? And he goes, well, all I do is read. And I go, you do understand that some TV and movies are scripts and people write those things. They write screenplays. And so there are books that are shit and there's TV and movies that are good. You know, it's not, I love how we just assume that this medium, everything on this medium is trash. And that's what scares me in coaching. And it's why we get along with you guys is it's tremendously black and white. So let me get this straight. You're guiding people, athletes through trying parts of their lives, trying to get them to think of all these options and opportunities they have, no matter what hardship they're dealing with their team or injuries or what have you. Yeah, we're black and white. Squat, don't squat, TV, books, this, that. I mean, people are insane. And it's just because there's so much grooming and absolutism in the industry. And it scares me. The other thing is this. Think about how many of us get into the field when we're young, right? Like Lachie, when did you get into this, relatively speaking, just even at the base level?
Yeah, mate, 17, first in. I was living the dream, earning just cash money, working with housewives.
And did have a fro at the time.
Had an afro, yeah.
Have you seen the photo?
Yes, I've seen the photo. Jordi, how about you? When did you get into this?
17 as well.
Okay, so think about it. We all get into it relatively young. And our job is about developing other people. Yet are any of us fully developed at 7 in our teens, in our 20s, shit, even in our 30s? Do we have it all figured out? And so what's funny is we get into these jobs where our entire day is about helping other people grow. Yet we're in these jobs that are easily 12-hour days sometimes. And then we get into our 30s and we're burnout or we feel stuck or we're not quite sure where to go. Well, no wonder you haven't experienced anything else. So I'd say with that, to go along with Lachie's statement and both of your statements about how good the things like the Defiant ones are, what you see with people like Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre or anybody, by the way, that goes and does this, they just applied range. Imagine that. We say, hey, don't specialize early to athletes. Yet what do we do in our field? Specialize early. And then we wonder, like, the cognitive dissonance is just crazy to me. You can do other things. And by and large, those other things will help you be a better coach. Where if you're just on the floor all the time, right, that doesn't mean I can stand in the garage. That doesn't make me a car. Like, you got to have different experiences to be a better coach.
Our Con Ed list is pretty much Simpsons and the Friends episodes with Locks. If you can't do the Fireball episode of Friends,
right, if you don't know Friends, you can work for another company as far as I'm concerned.
Mate, and you just mentioned before you're about to hit the road and you're going to go off and do another lot of workshops with the art of coaching. What we were speaking about before, Locks and I, is those workshops attract such a diverse audience. From coaches, whatever you want to define as a coach after that conversation just there, businessmen and women, etc. What tends to be some of the key takeaways or breakthrough moments that seems to be a trend throughout these workshops? Yeah.
So just to give anybody context listening, we run a workshop called the Apprenticeship, and it's all about power dynamics, social dynamics, kind of working your way out of the corner when you're in some pretty tough moments. And again, this was another light bulb to me that whenever I went to conferences outside of strength and conditioning, you saw a lot more professions represented. But when you went into strength and conditioning conferences, right, it was the usual S&C, physio, sports science, what have you. And we just limit our perspective. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to open this up. I'm not doing I could have easily, Jordi, gone the other route and been like, I'm going to do a whole workshop / certification on queuing and logistical management and how to set up your session. And should you be in a circle orientation or multiple line? Now, I'm not crapping on that. That all has value and it should be part of coach education. But I think that would have been a cheap route for us to go. So where we opened this up and we said, hey, first of all, when I dive into the research of what is effective coaching, the first thing you find is that coaching is a social practice with social beings in a social environment. And you can't coach without communicating. Now, you can have a great training session, relatively speaking, without kettlebells, dumbbells, cables, what have you. We can get something done, right? You guys did that. I saw all the creative things that you were doing supporting your athletes during COVID and what have you. It's, of course, we need overload, but there's multiple ways that you can have that. But where do coaches get that from a communication standpoint? Certainly not on the floor. You could say, well, just reps. Well, I'd love to tell you I'm a better husband by waking up and just being married every day, but that's not how that shit works, right? And so a lot of times coaches are not put in social scenarios where they have to work themselves out of that. So we said, well, this is indicative of a lot of professions. So we ran a pilot. And in that pilot, we had an FBI analyst. We had a woman that worked in HR for a Fortune 500 company, 3 to 4 coaches, and I can't remember what else. And what was great about it is in one of the evaluations where people were doing role playing and then looking at the video review, there was one coach that gave some of these strength coaches high marks, right? And we can get into the weeds of this later if you want. I'm just trying to be relatively brief. And then one of the FBI analysts stood up and was like, actually, I see it another way. And this woman in HR is like, yeah, I see it this way still. So now we're engaging in a form of divergent thinking, right? People are making sense of things in different ways. People are being challenged. And we start realizing we have all these cross conversations happening across all these fields. And so the key takeaway is, first of all, as leadership goes, so does communication. And as communication goes, there's a hell of a lot more than we thought. It is not just verbal, nonverbal, paraverbal, right? There is also the reality of what makes people do the things they do. And it is not just autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? These things make for great TED Talks, but shit's deep. Like, people are weird, scarcity-minded, risk-averse, change-hating people. And so we get into these things and how they manifest. And then we also created a scoring evaluation for, over 23 meta and subcategories of how communication can go wrong. Like, think what we're doing right now. One of the subcategories is synchrony, right? When you're in a conversation with somebody, do you keep it on topic? Do you answer their question? Another part of it is personalization. Do I refer to you as Jordi? Do I refer to you as Lachlan, right? Do I change tonality, pitch, tempo? Those things are pretty straightforward. What's the strength of the questions I'm asking? How many of them start with how, what if, how many, right? And so imagine 23 different things and you're like, holy shit, this is a lot more nuanced than I thought. And it's not, the goal isn't for Lachlan to communicate like you or you to communicate like Lachlan, or a young coach right now trying to communicate like somebody they believe, oh my God, this person's amazing. The goal is to kind of meet you where you're at and close the perceptual gap. So if you rank yourself a 3 or, let's say a 5 on 7 different things you did in this role-playing scenario, and everybody else says, no, I thought you were a 1. That's clearly a problem. That's the perceptual gap. Whereas on the other end, the goal isn't to get a magical 35. What's a perfect communicator? What are we talking about if you're in Beijing or Australia? What if we're just BSing with some friends or talking to an academic? That's contextual. So I think just the messiness of that, how people see themselves, how they rank communication, so we can quit talking about it like it's a soft skill. It's way more quantifiable than we think it is.